Hello and welcome to a very different version of View from Luffield. I'll do a roll call. Phil, present. The two viewers who are watching this, present. Anthony.
And I'm here too. We're not together, just because of a few crossover in plans, so we've not been able to get together for this one. And I'm just going to stress that I know there's been a lot of talk in the media this week about people going behind their backs on their partners, and far be it from us to be childish enough to weigh in on the saga that's occurred this week. I will just say that if you're not happy with your current position, don't go to a public place and cuddle when you might get caught on camera. And I don't know the truth or the how real this photo is, but this came across my social media this week. So for those involved in the Coldplay incident, and if this isn't the real picture, then I am gobsmacked. But just be ashamed of yourself. Don't watch Coldplay.
We interrupt our program to...
No, Anthony. Right. This episode is all about the potential Max Verstappen move to Mercedes. It's the elephant in the room, and it's the rumour that won't go away. It's constantly there, and with Christian Horner leaving recently, I think it's something that needs to be addressed. I said at the start, I don't see it happening. I don't believe that it will. But the more and more it ticks on, the more likely it becomes. It's definitely an improvement. I mean, you get Max Verstappen into any team, it's a massive improvement to the lineup. He's one of the best ever. I do feel for both George Russell and Antonelli. I don't think they've done anything wrong, really. But this is the way the sport goes. If someone better becomes available, then you go and get them. I think if I were Max, I'd probably make the move. I can only dream of being a Formula 1 driver, but there's a lot of unknowns at the moment in the Red Bull stable, the Red Bull family. There's a lot of settled structure in the Mercedes. Again, with 2026 coming up, they have their own engine supply. It's not something that they share with anyone. Red Bull are going to Ford. I'll touch on that a bit in a later segment. The time could be right. But will he? Is he? I think he is. And I didn't think he was. And I even said at the start of this video I didn't think he was. But like I say, I think the time is right. I think he's done all he can. I think you get to a point in any team, or you look at other drivers through the years. They get to a point where they feel like they've gone as far as they can go, and maybe this is Max's time that he's gone as far as he can go. I can just imagine Laura watching this now and cringing at the fact that a beloved Red Bull might be losing the best driver on the grid, but it looks more and more likely. Recently there was flight tracker that showed both Toto Wolff and Max Verstappen's private jet turning up in Sardinia, I think. There's no smoke without fire, and they know they're being tracked, and they know that people will see what they're doing, and yet they still meet up away from Formula 1, away from the track, away from the normal circus. Yeah, there's a reason for that. Now, again, which driver do Mercedes get rid of? I think Antonelli's on a long-term contract, so he's probably safe. I know George Russell's contract expires at the end of this year. Might be wrong. But it feels very harsh on the actual, Mercedes drivers who are still there. But we shall see. Does it mean it's the right move? Does it mean it's the right time? No. It's an opinion of some guy sat on a bed. But yeah, I think momentum's picking up now. I think people are finding out too much. I think Red Bull have made their massive, bid to keep him by getting rid of Horner, and I'm not sure if that's going to be enough or not. Don't know what Andy thinks. What do you reckon, Ant?
I actually disagree. I think it will happen. I think it's a great move for Mercedes to go and get Max Verstappen. I think in George Russell, they've had somebody that is good. Don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to slate George Russell, but I don't know if he's a World Championship contender. I think Kimi Antonelli is certainly one for the future, and I think Max Verstappen is certainly one for now. But I think it's a great move for Mercedes, and I think it will happen. The big question, though, next is what next for George Russell? Going to that very same point, there have been rumoured sightings of a Red Bull at the Silverstone Grand Prix weekend with a photo shoot on it. Now, the rumoured sightings that came from a drone, now I cannot find these images as I looked for them again this morning. I did see them last week, but I can't find them again as I've gone to look at it now. But there have been rumours of a Red Bull being photographed on the start-finish straight at Silverstone for a photo shoot with the number 63 on the front of it. Now, I think if Red Bull can pull their finger out and sort their act out, because at the moment, as we've said a million times, the whole mess with Christian Horner, the whole second seat syndrome thing that they've had for years and years and years and years and years, I could see George Russell seeing this as a big opportunity. And I think if this is real, if this is on the table for George, a possibility of going in the Red Bull seat, I think he absolutely has to bite their hand off and take it now. I think if you look at the other teams that you would argue that are up there at the front, I think there isn't a space at McLaren. Unless, of course, they have a Prost-Senna sort of thing between Piastri and Norris, where Prost gets a bit fed up with I don't know who'd be Prost and who'd be Senna in the example. But unless they have a similar situation where one of them just leaves because they can't coexist, I don't see that happening personally. But I think that's the only thing that creates a vacancy at McLaren. So that rules that option out for George Russell. I think with Ferrari, they've got a long-term contract in Charles Leclerc. They have a lot of faith in Charles Leclerc, so his seat isn't available. They spent a hell of a lot of money to bring in Lewis Hamilton and got rid of Carlos Sainz, who we on this channel absolutely love. So the Ferrari aren't getting rid of either Leclerc or Hamilton, so that rules out McLaren. It rules out Ferrari. Mercedes obviously would be full now with Verstappen and Antonelli, we believe. Then you start to go a little bit further down the grid. You've got Alpine. I just don't see that being a George Russell fit, and they are a mess at the moment. You've got Aston Martin, but we all know that Lawrence Stroll isn't going to get rid of his own son, so that rules out one seat. We've said it before on this channel. I think if Aston Martin provide a car that's capable of winning a world championship, Fernando Alonso stays to try and fight for that one more world championship. So I don't see Aston Martin being a possibility. I think Audi, but I think what they've gone for is they've asked for a lot of faith in Hülkenberg and Bortoleto to join Sauber now when they're not quite Audi. So I think for Audi to replace one of them and dislodge that trust, almost disobey that trust, I think that's a little bit... I don't see them doing that. I think that'd be a little bit unfair by Audi were they to get rid of either Hülkenberg or Bortoleto. I think So I don't see them. I don't... The point I'm getting at, and I'm getting a long-winded way around it, is I don't see where the next seat is for George Russell. I don't believe he leaves the sport. I believe somebody further down the grid takes a punt on this. Look at Carlos Sainz going to Williams, for example. So a lower team absolutely makes a seat available for a George Russell. But I think that's a Haas, a Williams, maybe a Racing Bulls. I don't see... I don't... I'd be very... He's got to take this for me. If he has any chance of trying to fight for a world championship, George Russell has to take the seat at Red Bull if it's available to him. There are problems at Red Bull. We know this. But the problems may have been circulating with Christian Horner, as we've said. So the fact that he's no longer out the door, it's not a team at the peak of its powers. No Horner, no Newey, no. They obviously go to Ford next year for their engine supply, for the power unit supply. So whether or not that's going to be strong, we don't know. But George Russell, he has to take this opportunity at Red Bull if it's available to him. If he doesn't, I don't know. I don't know what's next for George Russell. So for me, the best option for George has got to be Red Bull. Going off these rumours, of course, but he has to take that chance if it's available to him.
What next for Red Bull? Lost Horner, lost Wheatley. Feels like they've lost a bit of focus, a bit of momentum. Second driver is being outclassed by a driver who looks like he's on his way out. They're losing the Honda backing, which is a massive loss to them. This is make or break. This is Project Rebuild. This is Man United almost recently. Yep, there you go. Just to throw in a bit of allegiance there. I think this is the watershed moment. It's make or break a team that's funded by someone who isn't a Formula One team. You know, they're not engineering, they're a drinks company. And we've waxed on about how impressive it was that Christian Horner got Red Bull back in and got Red Bull into the sport and did all they could with the money provided to them. It was the right fit for Red Bull. You know, with their backing of anything that's a little bit extreme. You know, most of the MotoGP riders are backed by Red Bull. All BMX stuff is backed by Red Bull. Felix Baumgartner, who we lost this week, by the way, and his huge base jump that was slightly higher than Katy Perry becoming a astronaut. You know, he had Red Bull on his astronaut suit. So it was the right fit in the right environment. This is high octane, edgy as sea, life risking stuff. But for how long? I don't know if they'll stick around. They stuck around at the start as they were, you know, a new team. You know, they got the right people in. They got Newey in. They got David Coulthard with his experience. Absolute class driver as well. Thought I'd throw that in there. But will the money carry on without Dietrich Mateschitz, you know, who passed away, a while back now, but yeah, he was the big backer. He was the guy who went along with it, who backed it, who wanted to be there. Will they want to be there if they start mid-table, or you know, if they start falling backwards? They've took a massive gamble with these Ford power units. Barring the Cosworth engines, of course, that Ford don't have a good, a good history, a good heritage in Formula One. You know, there's been a lot more engine providers who've been in it longer and are more successful. You know, and again, I'd take the Cosworth engine out of that equation because that was something mega, and you'll have to go back a fair few years to understand what I'm talking about there. It's a big risk. It's a big risk to go with Ford. It could pull off. It could be a masterstroke that, you know, they could potentially still be at the front or near the front. They've definitely got the expertise. They've got the right people behind them. But they've took some massive hits. Massive hits. If we were to assume that we're right and Max is going, you know, Newey goes, Wheatley goes, Horner goes, Honda goes, Verstappen goes. Where do they go? Now, you know, no one can predict the future, and with 2026 being a completely different set of regs, it would be foolish to try and, you know, decide on that or say that this is definitely going to be the case. But I can see them struggling. I can see, you know, even Sauber taking steps forward. And I'm not going to say that Red Bull are going to end up, you know, racing Audi next year, but Sauber are taking some massive steps forward, and they've got the right people in for next year, the right setup, and they look comfortable as a team. Now, again, they're another one with a new engine next year, so this could all go out the window. Everyone's got a new engine It's just that, the normal front runners, your Mercedes, your Ferrari, who notoriously struggle with new regs anyway, but that's another... I might do that rant one day when I've got 3 hours. But, they've got the foundations, they've got the know-how, they've got the experience. Even Honda going to Aston Martin next year have the experience. I don't know where Red Bull's experience is going to be. I don't believe they're going to have... I don't believe they're going to have a very strong driver lineup. I think Hadjar would be slightly foolish if he were to, jump ship to Red Bull, but you can't fault him for the opportunity. I think Tsunoda has struggled massively. And, there's talks around today that Honda have cut all ties with him. Red Bull are in talks about his future. It doesn't look good. It doesn't. A very, very tricky situation for Red Bull. They either have to smash the driver market. I mean, if Verstappen were gone, the first guy I'd be on the phone to would be, Carlos Sainz. He knows them. I'm sure there's a buyout in his Williams contract somewhere that says he can go to a team like Red Bull. George Russell's a nice fit, I suppose. I mean, he's got... I don't know if he fits the Red Bull brand. I think that's a nice way of saying it. I'm sure people will agree with me or disagree with me. But yeah, I think Red Bull have to do all they can to save Max and keep Max. I don't believe they're going to anymore, which is a complete swing from where I was not so long back. They've got to spend big in the driver market, and they've got to put all the resources into the chassis and what they were known for in the past, because I don't think they can put money on Ford getting it right with them. Again, I could be wrong, but doesn't feel right. It's going to be a tricky one, and I suppose that's why we're doing this episode. Very special one, no racing this weekend. But there we go. I'll hand you over to Anthony again now, who's going to discuss something else. I'm sure it'll be great. Bye for now.
And thanks again, Phil. And just wanted to quickly sum up as well, just on the Max Verstappen to Mercedes, and even, if we are discussing Russell to Red Bull as well, or anybody else to Red Bull, that F1 has a history of moving teams not necessarily always delivering what you want it to. There are stories and there are examples in the past of it being a great move. You look at Lewis Hamilton, obviously leaving McLaren to join Mercedes. He did have a world championship with McLaren, but then went on to win his other 6 with Mercedes. Can't say anything. And not only win 6 world championships, but absolutely dominate the sport. I think it goes down as the greatest team and driver partnership in Formula One history. So obviously there for Lewis Hamilton and Mercedes, a tick. It's probably a little bit early to judge what Lewis Hamilton to Ferrari is going to be, but so far it hasn't been great. He's probably been outperformed by his teammate Charles Leclerc. All right, there's reasons to that. We don't have to go into it in this episode, but so that's not, we don't know if that one was a success. There's Emerson Fittipaldi, won the Formula One World Championship with McLaren in 1974, left at the end of 75 to help his brother's team kickstart into Formula One. Was a disaster for Fittipaldi. Never came back to those same levels again, certainly in F1. So there are examples of it being a good thing. Sebastian Vettel is another example of it being a poor move. So obviously won the World Championship 2010 through 2013, 4 in a row, left because he wanted to follow in the footsteps of his hero Michael Schumacher, left to join Ferrari. Again, never reached the heights. Fernando Alonso, you could argue, did the same thing, left Renault after 2 world championships to go to both McLaren and Ferrari, didn't win another one again, and is now sort of just meandering and hoping that Aston Martin can produce him a car that can fight for one more. I've just mentioned Michael Schumacher. He's an example of a move within F1 being phenomenal. Obviously won the world championship in 94 and 95 with Benetton, went to Ferrari. That 96 Ferrari famously was god-awful. Phil will probably agree with me on this bit. That car was just just crap. But because Michael Schumacher is the athlete and the professional that he is, turned that into a car that up until Lewis Hamilton and Mercedes, was the most successful driver-team partnership in F1 history, winning 5 in a row from 2000 to 2004. So there are examples of what I'm getting at in this segment is Max Verstappen to Mercedes. A move within teams in Formula One isn't always a success story. And yeah, some drivers do it because they aren't given much of a choice. You think of Carlos Sainz leaving Ferrari to go to Williams for this season. He wasn't really given much of a choice. George Russell may not be given much of a choice where he sits in 2026 if Max is to make this move. So I do think we started this off, Phil saying he wasn't sure that Max to Mercedes would happen. I now sit on the camp that I think it will. I would just edge on the side of caution that doesn't always necessarily mean success in Formula One. And there are examples both ways, both of it working phenomenally well and both of it working horribly and not delivering the success that you want to. It's going to be very, very interesting. We are just about to enter silly season. We're about to enter the midway point of the Formula 1 season. We've got Spa and Hungary still to come, and then we have the summer break, which is where it all just descends into chaos and we don't necessarily know. We've been granted with it early this year. I must admit, the Max rumours and Christian Horner being sacked. But there are, like I say, there are examples in this sport. I suppose there are examples in other sports. Don't want to use the football analogies too much, but any Liverpool fans and Chelsea fans out there will remember Fernando Torres leaving Liverpool, going to Chelsea and just look like a completely different player. That can work in other sports, and again, to go back to my examples, it can certainly work in Formula One. And I just wonder, is Mercedes set up for Max? How will it fare on Kimi Antonelli if he does go? Because Max has had for so long at Red Bull, we will build the car basically around you and your teammates just going to have to struggle. I can't see Toto Wolff doing that. He never did it for Lewis. If you remember, Bottas at least still had a car that was competitive and still won races. So Mercedes won't do that for Max. And maybe that leans more towards this not being the success story that we all think. It's going to be really, really, really interesting. Phil said he didn't think it's going to happen. I said I think it will happen, but I just err on the edge of caution. Like I say, look at Sebastian Vettel as a perfect example of it not working. Look at Lewis Hamilton to Mercedes as a perfect example of it working tremendously well. So Max has got to weigh this up. But what's he got to lose? Interesting. And that's it. A very special episode. Just our take on the Max Verstappen to Mercedes rumours. Drop us a like, drop us a subscribe if you enjoyed this, and let us know in the comments as well. Let us know in the comments if you think that Max and Mercedes will happen, and if it does, what do you think happens for George Russell? Or are we wrong? Are we completely off the mark? Would it be Verstappen and Russell at Mercedes, and is it Antonelli that will fall? Let us know in the comments what you think. Is Max going? Is Max staying? Do they both like Coldplay? Who knows? And we'll see you next week, because next week is Spa. It's one of my favourite tracks of the Formula One World Championship season. So we will be here to obviously give you a post-race on Sunday. We'll be here to give you our views and what happened. And I know Phil's going to love this last bit, and he hasn't got the last word on this. So come on, McLaren boys. See you next week, guys, for the Spa Grand Prix. Thank you very much.